But last but not least, I thought it was very interesting to hear from two NBA insiders who normally get votes for MVP awards or just all NBA teams, and even they are confused about what's going on within their industry. The fact that Pablo Torre receives one of the highest awards for journalism when there's a case that's not necessarily wrapped up. They gave great insight to how this was very unusual for their industry. But yet, for two veteran NBA reporters, they did not discuss at any moment the outcome of the Carr versus Sanberg case, which completely flipped this whole fiasco upside down. Once again, we're living in very interesting times. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
It's also gotten messier. The Athletic just reported, was it yesterday, 2 days ago, that there could be a second no-show endorsement deal, that there are questions now about a secondary sort of endorsement company sponsor, thank you. And now they're investigating that.
And the timing of them making the announcement of that investigation came just a few days later on July 14th. So July 30th, that Carr versus Sanberg ruling came down. Kawhi Leonard, July 6th, fired his agent. And then that trade between the Clippers and the Raptors got put on hold by July 9th. Very interesting, the league happened to throw a nice distraction saying that, oh, we're investigating a possible second quote-unquote secret deal with Kawhi.
Are we in a position where there's so much pressure to wrap up this investigation that there's going to be a major stone left unturned? Where am I in terms of where we are now? I am shocked it has taken this long. I understand that lawyers do a lot of lawyering and there's a lot of, T's to cross and I's to dot, but I'm sorry. I don't know why, especially for the amount of money I can only imagine the league is spending on this investigation, why this hasn't been someone's everyday. And there are enough lawyers at this law firm that you could have put 1,000 of them on this, right?
And there's also enough quote unquote NBA journalists out there that should know the reason why she's asking this question right here is because of the outcome of the Carr versus Sanberg case that came down on June 30th. Once again, this whole fiasco exposes a lot of different things, including the fact that NBA media right now is very compromised. Matter of fact, the details of their gambling deals are even more concerning, as they make a lifetime commission off their audience losing.
There are enough lawyers at this law firm that you could have put 1,000 of them on this, right? And had this done in half the time. If they had 500 people on this, if they had 100 people on this, whatever it is, you could double it and have it done in half the time, or et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why it was allowed to take this long. I certainly would have pressed for it to be happening quicker.
I don't think they anticipated it taking this long. I think they thought maybe 6 months before
someone's
the end
in
of the
charge.
season. Right, but what do you think of Adam's point that, he said, I can tell them to stop at any time?
Sure, but we might be getting to that point. He says it's got to be done. I don't know when the calendar turns on when this trade would have to be decided or when they feel like they would have to make this decision, but it's coming. And if it's coming, that means that possibly there's a whole new wrinkle of this investigation that could be pretty significant that might just not even get investigated. It's already embarrassing to me that a Pulitzer Prize has been awarded for a media investigation into this, and the official investigation still hasn't even wrapped up. It's not that the media investigation happened and the official one hasn't. We've already gotten to the point where a Pulitzer has been awarded into that first investigation, meaning that it was deemed journalistically sound enough by some of the greatest experts in the history of journalism.
Sheesh. We're getting some insights right here of how unusual it was for Pablo Torre to get that award, and the investigation is still ongoing. That also shows you how compromised their industry has become. For the most part, the business model now is to link up with a gambling company and have an on-air personality like Stephen A. Smith just spit out a bunch of hot takes, hiding behind anonymous sources, and when shit gets too hot, they try to hide behind these quote-unquote ethics. Oh, I'm a journalist. Get the fuck out of here.
We've already gotten to the point where a Pulitzer has been awarded into that first investigation, meaning that it was deemed journalistically sound enough by some of the greatest experts in the history of journalism that it was at least a journalistically sound investigation into problems and potential issues here, and that the league still hasn't been able to come back and say there's a there or not. I think that is problematic, and I don't think it's anyone's, I'm not saying it's Adam Silver's fault. It's not his fault. He's got a big job with a lot of things to do. But I don't know. Am I hiring, no offense to the fine people of Wachtell, but I know they are the go-to investigative firm for both the NFL and the NBA. The next time there's an investigation, if I'm interviewing law firms, I might say, hey, buddy, how quickly are we going to get this done?
You know what? It wouldn't shock me if Wachtell ends up dropping the NBA as a client if they're put in a position where their reputation could be on the line. Once again, the league has it set up where Steve Ballmer is paying all the expenses for his own investigation, while at the same time there's other cases going on that could open things up for the feds to subpoena not only Steve Ballmer, but also the Clippers. So if they come to a conclusion too fast and give him a light slap on the ass and just a small fine and maybe a few draft picks, and the feds then open up the paperwork and show the audience, the viewing audience especially, that the credibility of the league as well as that law firm is in question, it's fucking over. You can't recover from that. But once again, as NBA voters, right here, Rachel Nichols, as well as Chris Mannix, they seem like they're not aware of some of the outside cases that are going on, because this shit is buried deep and it's not by mistake.
I agree with
because
that.
I want it done right, but it can get done right at different speeds.
I think he has no choice now.
Mr. Wachtell might have some explaining to do.
I think Adam's got no choice now but to let this thing play out, because he has got to get the full, unvarnished, uninterrupted report at this point. Because if the result of this report is that he is going to, well, if the result though of this report is that he is going to submit the Clippers to some kind of serious punishment, he knows that there is probably going to be a fight coming from the 13th richest man in the world. A guy that has the best lawyers on the planet. A guy that is going to be armed to the teeth and potentially ready to fight for years to drag the NBA into a multi-million, multi-billion perhaps lawsuit. Like that, whatever percentage you want to put on that happening, that at least has the potential of happening.
Now, when you look at the situation with Pablo Torre, he's one independent guy. So if a lot of the accusations and just paperwork trail that he has left was false, you would think Ballmer would completely not only bury his career, but he would completely destroy his whole media existence. The fact that he has not done that yet is because he already understands that if he sues Pablo, he could open himself up to get subpoenaed. And once again, all the paperwork from the Clippers, the emails, all the trails have to come to light. And they do not want that, because more than likely, we might see some shit that they never wanted us to see, allegedly. Let's just leave it at that.
At this point, as frustrated as the NBA is, as frustrated as clearly Adam is, frustrated as people are to be dealing with this still after almost a year of this initial reporting coming out, I don't think he has a choice anymore. He has to follow this thing all the way through.
The point you make about Steve Ballmer has always and will continue to be true. Regardless of what shows up in that report, Steve Ballmer has the legal right to take them to court over it. And he could, with all of his money and lawyers and everything else, drag this out for years, regardless of what's in that report. That report could show photos of him handing Kawhi Hamburglar style, like a grab a thing of money, a brown sack with a big dollar sign on it, and he could still take them to court for years. So that is something that the league is balancing. There's an implied power here that Ballmer has, that the league is going to be balancing. There's certainly talk of, we see sports leagues do this all the time, they try to end around that reality by saying, we are basically going to enter into a plea bargain with one of our own owners and say, we have met, we have talked about the evidence in front of us, we have agreed together that this is the correct punishment, and therefore there is not going to be a challenge, there is not going to be a thing. The Players Association does this too, right?
Now, all the stuff right here Rachel Nichols is talking about sounds fine and dandy. But that ruling on June 30th with the Carr versus Sanberg case has fucked it up. They cannot do that anymore, because now the door has been opened for the feds, government, state, whoever, to subpoena Ballmer and the Clippers. Adam Silver's trump card to avoid all this, so they can get to a point where they can do the same things she was just referring to, is to get that situation handled. And that's what Steve Ballmer, since November 2025, trying to get that case thrown out. Who knows? Donald Trump might be the only one that could come to the rescue.
Right? They talk and we're not going to challenge it because there has seemed to have been a backroom conversation.
Coming to that,
I see that being the more likely scenario of how this ends. The question is, how much power do both? That's a negotiation.
Yeah.
And how much power do both sides have going into that negotiation? The league's power, the other 29, currently at 29 other owners' power, is what's in that report. But Ballmer's power is still going to be that he has all of this real life world financial and political and legal power. And that's going to be part of this. And I think the fact that the longer this has gone on, the Athletic report, and I have no reason to believe it's not true, if there really is enough evidence of a secondary possible end around, whether it actually happened or not, it's got to be investigated out. And if it's taken 10 months for the first one to be investigated out, how are you telling me that the second one is going to be thoroughly enough done that we're also going to be done
being investigated
this summer?
right now. Like,
it
we don't
might
know
be.
what they're doing there. They
I'm
might
just
have already
saying that,
pulled
like,
on that thread a little bit.
You are potentially, the longer it goes on, the more you are opening up to accusations from all sides of this got dragged out to give the Clippers a break. This got dragged out, but then hurried up at the end and wasn't completely, the Clippers got a break that way because it wasn't thoroughly investigated out.
Once again, we're casually listening to two NBA media veterans right here. They have a lot of sway within the league, who gets awards. They have a lot of relationships, but yet it's amazing how they're completely clueless about the cases that are around this whole Aspiration and Kawhi situation. The NBA, as well as that law firm, whatever ruling they're about to come down on, has to take a pause. Because if Steve Ballmer gets subpoenaed, the reach not only into Ballmer's emails and other entities and just lines of communication is going to far reach of what the NBA and that law firm could ever see. Reputations are on the line.
The Raptors got screwed. The Raptors didn't get screwed. I don't know how they can penalize Kawhi Leonard without getting into an actual legal fight with the Players Association. Because if you sit there and say, we are getting into the endorsement contracts of you players, an area which until this point we have had no jurisdiction, you are going to have a fight on your hands because that is where their real money comes from.
Once again, that ruling on June 30th has allowed that jurisdiction to happen outside of the NBA. And they do not want that paper trail to be seen. And from what Pablo Torre has shown so far, there's a lot of emails linking the two. But because the NBA only has a jurisdiction to reach in and find out what happened within that Clipper building, they can't necessarily dig into Ballmer's other entities.
And I can't imagine that that's not going to be a legal fight there. So there is a lot that has to be litigated and balanced here. And it's not just when the report comes back. Then Adam Silver has got to figure out what his decision is. There's supposed to be an arbitration process, I believe, written into these rules.
This is why I find it hard to believe that unless there is some kind of agreement between all parties, which I think would be best case scenario for the
that is,
NBA.
I'm sure, what everybody wants. That is typically what a sports
where
league
it's like
wants.
the Clippers can find some way to save face where Ballmer doesn't get suspended, somebody gets axed, they lose a draft pick, they can say,
This happened
we
without
didn't
his
know, but you
knowledge.
know what, in the interest of moving forward.
Right, this happened within the organization, without my knowledge, we're
Right.
going to whatever, X, Y, and Z.
Plausible deniability
Yeah.
from the Clippers. If that happens, it's best case scenario. But the Clippers, in all their public statements, they seem very dug in. That
They
they're
are.
not going to accept any responsibility for anything
Didn't
that
do
may or
anything
may
wrong.
not have happened with all this. And I asked this of Adam, Adam, how can you get a report? Let's say you get the report next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a big report.
Yeah.
That is going to be
you
multi-volume,
made a great point
thousands
there.
of pages. You are not going to be able to digest that in a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then once you digest it, then you're going to come to the conclusion of whether or not you're going to penalize. If you do penalize, how severe are you going to, this feels like something. The next Board of Governors meeting, I think, is in January or September. This feels like something that could still be unresolved in September.
Oh, it's going to be unresolved in September. Oh, yeah, it's going to be unresolved. And if Silver gets more buddy-buddy with Trump and gets his way, hell, it could be resolved.
It really feels that
But
way.
when would again, Mr. League machinations, which I know nothing about, when would this Kawhi Leonard deal or not deal have to be?
I don't think it has to be finalized at any point.
Well, I mean, it does. Obviously, they could just say, okay, we're not doing this, we're going home.
Well, they could say they're going home, but I think they can always.
For it to be salvaged, when would it have to be salvaged by?
Well, I don't think. I mean, it hasn't really been.
There's no.
Yeah, there's no
It could
date
happen
there.
in
Like they've
November?
agreed to the terms of this deal.
It could
They haven't
happen in
final-
December?
It could happen anytime. Yeah,
Okay.
they could do
Got
it. Now, if Kawhi winds up getting punished with suspension, obviously the Raptors will say we're going to revisit some of this and let's maybe tinker with the deal a little bit.
I don't understand how this contract that they're trading right now could be null and void, because it's not even the contract we're talking about. Isn't it 2 contracts ago?
It's 2 contracts ago, yeah.
So, like, I am a little bit confused.
Is it? Yeah.
We're all confused because that trade might have been a smokescreen to kind of deviate the media as well as the NBA audience from that ruling on June 30th. And the fact that Kawhi Leonard on June 6th fired his uncle and agent. It's a lot of things going on. June 14th, the league throws in another monkey wrench. Oh, we're investigating possible second endorsement deal. But at the end of the day, that ruling on June 30th exposed Steve Ballmer as well as the Clippers, aka the NBA, into their lines of communications through emails, text messages, anything that goes on in that building to the feds. And that's what Adam Silver, Steve Ballmer, and that law firm that they're using do not want. But hey, we'll see. These are definitely interesting times. And if I was an NBA superstar on a team, I'll be reevaluating taking that pay cut, because low key, Steve Ballmer showing the true worth of an NBA superstar to a team. I mean, you could check out in my previous segments. I'll link in the description below, but we've gone over and counted well over $400 million Steve Ballmer has spent in order to keep up this whole aspiration facade. And most of that was the money outside of paying Kawhi. Again, interesting times that we're living in right now.